Yeah, safe to say things are definitely escalating in major cities. Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. This is Luke Radowski of WeAreChange.org, and what's happening in major cities? Well, don't expect it to be covered in the mainstream media that, of course, selects and picks what they choose to cover, what they choose to highlight, in order to represent the special interests that are truly in control of them. And that's why independent media gets censored, shadow banned, and 100% demonetized, like the video that you're watching right now. And that's why in this video we are going to be doing a deep dive about what is actually happening inside of the major cities in the United States, as well as a new egregious tax scheme that will punish fellow wage slaves if they dare to even leave the cubicle cages. Yes, that story is absolutely insane. We're also going to be talking about a very absolutely sickening moment, and we're one of the few left independent media organizations that could still do this, mainly because of your support. One easy way to support us is by checking out our t-shirt store, which, by the way, we are producing new content a lot. And just for this selection season, we of course have our Biden-Harris shirts, which just came out. We also have very interesting face coverings. We couldn't resist. We had to make two Biden and Harris shirts. Don't worry, we have a special Donald Trump 2020 shirt coming soon as well. The rich white guy and cop shirts are definitely doing well. Same with this one that is pinned, jailing people for victimless crimes. So yeah, definitely check out the shirt. It's definitely one way of expressing yourself that still can't be censored. A lot of other forms of expression are being censored, but wearing a t-shirt are not yet. Get them before they're banned or made illegal on our Teespring store, which is linked down below. Now, no surprise, major urban areas in 2020 have seen a surge of violence that is increasing, and as we've been telling you, will continue to increase from here. There was a heinous event that we're going to detail in full length in a little bit that just shows you how egregious some of these vicious attacks are. But before we do that, we have to understand that big city metropolitan areas are failed cities in failed states that are becoming more and more unlivable. In New York City, 76 people were injured, 14 killed within a span of a few days, almost quadrupling the statistics of crime that happened last year. There are new trends emerging where bodega stores, if you don't know what that means, it's corner stores in New York City that are usually operated by mom and pop small businesses, and those businesses are being targeted by having the ATMs ripped out of them, as it's becoming more of a common occurrence in New York City as theft, robberies, and crime are skyrocketing all throughout the city, as of course a lot of people are dealing with the horrible actions of government that exacerbate the social, political, economic conditions in that city. It's a city that I grew up in, and just being there moments ago, working on a separate video, and it saddens me to see the city in such despair, so many helpless people, so many people that are absolutely lost or are losing it in the middle of the street. Again, the video that I shot on the streets of New York City will be out on a separate channel for a separate project. If you want to know about that, definitely sign up on our email list. The link will be in the description below. We will notify you there, since this YouTube channel is becoming more and more unsustainable. And New York City has always been a difficult city to deal with, but it was worth it many of the times because of the positive things that you could experience in the city, positive things that have been eliminated, eviscerated, and made illegal by the government there. Now, who's responsible for the biggest financial center in all of the United States crippling down into chaos? Not, of course, the local leadership that's in charge of these draconian lockdown orders or promoters of protests that have turned into riots. According to the governor that's done all of that, it's, of course, Donald Trump who has liability in the spike of crime in New York City. An idea, of course, that is absolutely absurd, ridiculous, and highlights how unself-aware and what sort of deranged, lunatic kind of thinking is exhibited by Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York. The mayor of New York City, of course, not to be outdone, is his own kind of imbecile that paints political slogans on streets, also promotes protests, but continues to lock down any form of regular life and activity in the city. And of course, with economic despair, one of the few industries that is now thriving in New York City is literally bulletproof vest sales. Yes, stores in New York City are reporting an uptick of up to 80% of sales of body armor. Nope, that is not a joke. And anyone with a calm, rational sense of thinking is obviously fleeing these metropolitan slave cubicle prisons. And by the way, the city is a prison. If I go into detail about that, I would have to make another completely new video. But obviously, major metropolitan areas where the politicians have absolutely lost it are seeing apartments and houses fall in price dramatically. This fall will continue and exacerbate the big problems in that city that are manifesting to an insane level. Many people are leaving, others are preparing to leave, and of course, what did you expect was going to happen? I luckily was able to leave, change my residency, and I'm very happy I did so months ago. But with more and more rational thinking people leaving, this, of course, is leaving the states with a major problem on its hand. How will it finance its crazy ideas? How will it finance its huge welfare state? How will it finance all the bureaucrats, regulators, and interventionists of business? Who will pay the parking meters or the government agents in New York City that go through your trash to make sure you're recycling? Who's going to pay for their pensions? Well, because of that, states like New York and California are getting more aggressive when it comes to taxing and fighting their residents legally on their tax status. They are absolutely becoming desperate, and many people are being advised to keep as many records as possible to fight these draconian states that want to suck off your wealth like a money-hungry whore Terminator mosquito that can't be satisfied until it destroys every living form of life. Again, if you're in California, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Ohio, and you're changing residencies just like I did, make sure to keep records of whether it is easy passes, your stays in location, because you might need those, as many people are facing tough questioning, and states that don't want to relinquish its former residents that the states drove out. In California, they are even proposing more draconian measures, which will include taxing residents who flee the state. Yes, there's new tax increase legislation in California being proposed right now that would still tax residents, make them liable for taxes for over 10 years, even after they fled the state. Yes, this is not a joke here. This is literally what the state of California is proposing. It is just as absurd of what we saw in Minneapolis, where the city demanded businesses pay their taxes up front and early so they could be granted permission by the city to demolish their buildings that were destroyed in protest. Yes, businesses that literally wanted to restart, to demolish the burnt down property of the protesters, initially were told to pay up their property taxes early to have permission from the state to do so. Again, this law luckily was turned down. But one thing you need to understand, these insane proposals of literal slave masters trying to suck the freedom and wealth out of individuals who made their own way, we have to understand these approaches will be exacerbated, will continue to become more and more egregious as the cities and states continue to fail. Whenever you have a dying animal, expect some really erratic, irrational behaviors, and that's what we're going to expect from New York City, and of course the state of California. Other states like Connecticut and New Jersey won't be hit as hard, but will be eventually hit and will be down the same trajectory as those other major cities. Cities like Baltimore, parts of Chicago have already fallen in some circumstances, but this is going to be a little segue into the separate project that I'm working on. I have to stop teasing it. But we have to understand a lot of the states and cities that I just mentioned right now are big proponents of a protest movement that have turned violent. This violence is continuing and expanding and becoming more racially motivated by the day, as we're seeing sickening events of individuals being assaulted, robbed, dragged out of their car, interrogated, beat again, and then left unconscious with very serious injuries, as we just saw sickening video coming out of Portland. Now, according to the protesters, the person that they robbed, assaulted, and seriously injured, they say that this man, according to the protesters, quote, deliberately drove his car into the crowd, and that, quote, he was a white supremacist. A very strong allegation that there's absolutely no evidence of at all. Again, if there is any evidence, please send it my way, but I have not seen any at all. I did see a video, though, of a group of protesters looking for trouble, beating on individuals who were, of course, a different skin color than they were, targeting them specifically, robbing them. One of them was wearing a security uniform. And after beating and robbing one individual on video, it looks like a trans woman intervened. Then there was an altercation when then she was robbed and beat up. When this truck driver that's being accused of all these things, you could see in a video clearly intervening, trying to prevent the mob from beating up this trans woman after, of course, robbing her. Another white woman intervened in this incident, where she, of course, was also pummeled and beat up by the mob. The truck driver told her to please leave her alone. This led to an interaction where, of course, they were trying to drag him out of the car. He pulled away and crashed later down the block, which they chased him down, beat him up, interrogate him, and a man with a literal security uniform from the Star Protection Agency company viciously kicked this man, whose only crime was asking them to stop beating and robbing people, in the head so viciously that it left him unconscious with most likely very serious injuries that he will have with him for the rest of his life. His truck was robbed, his truck was totaled, all for the crime of asking people to stop beating and assaulting people. And as all of this was happening, where was the police? Where was the authorities? Well, of course, nowhere to be found. All of this as the mob was using racial slurs, and of course, you could see that this was a racially motivated attack, like the many that we have seen throughout this country, more and more at these Black Lives Matter protests that are promoted by politicians like Andrew Cuomo and Bill de Blasio, that will give all of their support to protesters, tell them to go out there, be out in the streets. Meanwhile, he'll shut down your business if you dare try to make a living for yourself. And that right there, in my opinion, is criminal behavior. It's absolutely ridiculous behavior. The incidences that we're seeing with this man trying to help other people, this happens far more than we know about. There's many of these incidences that there's no video of, that the mainstream media will willfully ignore. And yet it's another testament to how our society, especially in big cities, is spiraling out of control. Will continue to do so as, of course, politicians rejoice as they push for this divide and conquer agenda that is leading to more and more human suffering. And what do you expect? With the lockdowns, no possibility to make a living for yourself, a lot of sports being banned, all this pent-up aggression, all this poverty, all of this not done because of a sickness, all of this done by insane politicians who are power tripping on insane levels. In New Zealand, they just delayed the election. Meanwhile, we keep finding out how more and more the numbers are absolutely inaccurate. So yeah, we're living in very interesting times. Prepare accordingly. If you agreed with this video, please share it out there. Because of the shadow banning, because of the censorship, our reach, of course, is being very limited. The only way to surpass that is, of course, you directly intervening and getting this video out there to individuals that you think could get some value from this message. A lot of people need a wake-up call. A lot of people need to realize exactly what's happening so they could see the situation coming at them, because soon it's going to affect them more than later, and it's going to affect us in more and more severe ways. Send this video out to your friends and family members. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you, and this is why. Love you guys. Stay tuned for more here on wearechange.org.